Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Property Experts podcast. We are in for a fun ride this afternoon. It's been a very, very busy week and lots of exciting things have happened. And we're going to be talking about some of the strategies that we're going to be using in 2024 to grow our property development business. So welcome to those of you that haven't joined us. If you're a regular, thank you so much. And this is the agenda for this week, which is the 12th of January, 2023. We're going to be talking about one of our latest schemes, which we exchanged on today. Very exciting. Jack visited the Titan Property Network last night, where John Howard and Richard Bowser spoke, and he's going to be talking about some of the key takeaways that he learned from that. I had a pre-app meeting for our project in Thame with a planning officer, which I'll get into. And we're going to also be talking about the opportunities that we have for you guys to maybe work with us on some of our projects or buy some of the projects that we've secured for your own development to take on. We've got a stupidly busy year this year. We can't deliver everything that we secure. So we are happy to pass that on for a fee, obviously. The Muswell Hill project on Colney Hatch Lane, we posted about it on our socials yesterday. We were on site looking at some of the strip out works, which is half complete. Super excited to get that one started. And I'm going to be talking about the interior design process that we've gone through and giving you an update on some of that strip out. Looking at office fit outs and what the difference between a Cat A and Cat B fit out is. If you don't do offices, it's still probably quite useful for you going forward to understand the difference. We are recruiting in XP Surveys, looking for a business development manager, and we're going to be talking a bit more about that. We had a new starter at Aura Architecture, and then research and development tax relief. I still don't really understand exactly how it works. I'm going to be talking about the process that we've gone through with Aura recently to try and claim some tax relief from an R&D perspective, and how you might be able to benefit from that. And then finally, we're going to be talking about strategies to focus on in 2024, how that can impact and improve your property investment business, and also the property developments that we're going to be undertaking this year, and the strategies that they entail. So welcome to all of you. Alfie, thank you very much. I think you're probably the first person to actually write a comment before the live has actually started in preparation, which is amazing. And Jack, I don't know if you want to, should we save this to the end? So Alfie asks, how have you found acquisitions over the last few months? Really struggle to make anything stack up. Should we answer that now or later?
I think let's leave it at the end of the Q&A, but happily to answer that one. Yeah.
Cool. Sweet. So today's a big day. We have exchanged on our latest acquisition, which will actually go into our portfolio. So it will be held for sort of longer term rental income. We've learned over the last couple of years that developments are extremely lumpy cash, and cycles of cash flow go up and down. And to stabilize kind of our overheads, it's great for us to have a rental income coming in that can sort of subsidize some of that overhead in the development business. So we will be in the next year or two focusing on bringing in some assets that we're going to be holding longer term. And this is one of them. Jack, do you want to give an overview of what this one's about?
Yeah, for sure. So this is actually an old doctor's surgery in a place called Long Hamborough, which is a small town just outside Oxford. And also right next door to Blenheim Palace and Woodstock, so in a really affluent countryside area. Ben and I actually secured a site in Long Hamborough probably about 6 years ago now, and very topical for, I think it's slide 6 that we're coming on to about selling stuff on. We actually sold that site on to someone else, but this is one that we're buying to convert to 4 apartments. Prior approval planning application has already been submitted. We obviously have exchanged. And I think one thing that's key for this particular site, and if you can see it, you can see it definitely looks like a doctor's surgery that's been thrown together by, probably a tight budget and not necessarily taking design into consideration. And it's also got some potential scope in the car park. Naturally, you'd want to knock this thing down and build something beautiful. But we're not ego developers. We take care of the return on cash, the returns in the project. And this project weighs up really strongly for a light conversion to 4 flats, which will end up being cluster flats, which will be 4 HMOs across 13 bedrooms. We know the location really well. They'll rent really well. There's actually an airbase really nearby as well. and obviously the locality of Oxford helps. But just to give you some figures of what we're looking at. So we're buying the site for £350,000. We're going to spend about £350,000 developing out the apartments. So there's no real external huge changes that we're going to be making. We're kind of fitting out the internals for now. Well, that's currently we've got planned for the Class MA planning application. And then the GDV, depending on how you value it on specific flats or whether it's HMO, we think we could have a GDV of about 1.1 to 1.5 million. Now, you probably hear us say we struggle to make sites less than 2 million GDV work because it's the same amount of work. We need to hit that critical mass and size. But when it's going into our rental portfolio and providing strong income, we do sometimes bend the rules. So once those rooms are let out, our gross rent will be about £121,000 per year, and our net rent will be about £42,000 per year. And it just goes to show the strength of HMOs, because if you compare this to St Helens Mill, which is 14 apartments in Abingdon, that's probably going to net us less per annum as a cash flowing hold. So HMOs work really well. And the way that we have sort of angled this is we believe that we'll probably end up leaving about 100k left in the deal once we refinance them on a bricks and mortar valuation, because obviously they're all under 6 beds, so we won't really be able to capitalize on commercial valuations. I've heard mutters lately that Kent Reliant will do something below a 6, but I don't put a pit, what do they call it? News on WhatsApp groups into our spreadsheets. I know what we can do with this at the end, and within that 100k that we're leaving in, we're obviously getting a £42,000 return on that net. So that's a 42% return on cash per annum, which is a really strong return. So it works well, suits into our portfolio. We're super excited to get started on this. We're hoping to have the planning consent in Feb, and then crack on straight away, essentially. There are talks of maybe looking at the car park. Maybe we can put something on stilts and get another flat in there, and obviously enhance the external to make it more attractive. But for a 13-bed property with ample parking for all the tenants in a great location, we're super excited to get started on it.
Nice. Good stuff. And then you had the Titans event is something that I just haven't been to ever yet, and it just always clashes with something, but I'm really keen to get there because it's such a great event, with a full room and some great speakers. So I'm interested to hear, much as everyone else, kind of what the key takeaways were for you last night.
Yeah, so yesterday was as good as always. Manny and Romy Chopra always put on a really good event. I think we were up to like 110, maybe even more people there yesterday. So a huge crowd. The speakers were really good to have at the beginning of the year. We had Richard Bowser, who's the editor of Property Investor News, and he knows his stats. He loves his stats. And I'm a very stat-driven person, so I very much enjoyed him. I think a few people might have been nodding off, but that's just the case of it. And then we also had John Howard, who's a very experienced, decades of experience in property development and property investment. Very charismatic guy and very enjoyable to listen to. And also just cuts out all the bullshit, which we like, as you probably know. It was comical. A friend that's a developer sent me a DM once I shared this on my story and said, "What's the key takeaways?" And I said, definitely Chinese, maybe Italian first. But then I thought, why not share this with our own network? Because there were some key takeaways. And for me, it's sort of, you got two very data tech-driven people that have been through multiple cycles, that have seen multiple highs and lows in the market, and learning from them and seeing what they think in the market holds a lot of weight in our regard. So we talked about base rate and where we think that's going. Both John and other speakers that were actually at the event, but do believe that base rate is going to go down this year, but not only down. There's talks of it going down nearer to 4% on a base rate, which Richard thinks it could go as low as 4% this year, which I think would be huge. And I think the sentiment in the market would definitely come back. John was probably saying around 5, maybe a little bit less. So for anyone that isn't aware, it is the 12th of Jan and it's currently at 5.5%. So that's just putting things into perspective. In line with that, they believe that sentiment's going to come back in the market, and people are going to start buying houses to move and upsize or downsize and getting that confidence. A lot of agents have been talking about they're getting the clicks, but they're not getting the viewings, and that's, I think, where the market is at the moment. There's not a lot of the consumers actually moving. It was interesting. They were talking about the actual gross market drop that we've experienced, and this is news to me because they believe that the market has dropped 10 to 15% since we had that boom in after COVID periods, and they do believe that it will bounce back to where it was back in COVID periods. That's again an increase of 10 to 15% back to where it was. I don't know if we felt that, Ben. I kind of feel like it's just been slow at transacting.
Not really, yeah, it's just been slow.
Yeah. They also said that, which is quite an important point, is they both believe that the Labour will get in, and they also said that in a year of an election that it does put not necessarily uncertainty, but it just slows things to get things done. So we were talking actually quite a lot about Labour and what they're planning to do with inheritance tax and taxing of further property landlords that own things in their own name, and also potentially income tax. But fundamentally, my view is always the same. You've got to make a profit to be worried about tax. So great, the tax planning is super important, but at the end of the day, it's very difficult in this industry to really make good margins consistently over and over again through schemes. So I think that's an afterthought or an afterfact that you can't control, and essentially make the profit and then be worried about how you're trying to keep hold of it. But generally, to summarize everyone's views, it's a positive step, and they do believe this year in the market's going to get much better. John alluded to, he doesn't think that property prices are going to go up, but they'll probably stay stagnant. And if you keep your numbers at stagnant values today, you'll probably be okay in a year's time. But generally positive, and it's very rare that Richard, he doesn't beat around the bush. If you think there's a storm coming, he'll tell you. If you think there's some sunny skies coming, he'll tell you. And he was very positive. And just to sort of put context in that, as he is the editor of Property Investor News, he's reading and pulling apart articles from industry leading economists, property investors, bankers, even political people. So he really does have a good handle on it. But that was his view, and it was good to hear him being positive about where the market's going, because that could mean that it could actually go in a better direction.
Nice. And if you've got your own thoughts on that, then do drop us a comment. Let us know, where your head's at, what you're seeing in the market, the way you see things playing out, because we are interested to see what the wider property developers out there think. Cool. If you're listening on the Property Experts podcast, thank you. We're on Castbox. We are on Spotify. We're on Amazon Music and all of the Apple podcast platforms. We will be releasing 2 episodes per week for the next month or so. We are almost catching up with season 1, which was effectively 2023. Season 2 has now started. This is episode 2 of season 2. Which is in 2024. Thanks to everyone that tunes in. If I can ask one thing of you, it is to share it with just one person, and hope to spread the word as wide as we can. Point number 3 that we're going to be talking about is a pre-app meeting that I had in Thame, which is the project that we did in episode, I think, 37, a deep dive into this one, which will be a 17,000 square foot office conversion to 20 flats, plus some existing retained commercial space. And then the cream on top of that scheme was effectively going in for planning to add 4 sort of muse houses in the car park. We had the pre-app on Monday with the planning officer. It was absolutely freezing on site. He kept his cards close to his chest, and to be honest, I think he hadn't had all of the consultant kind of feedback. So when you put in a pre-app, effectively the process is you pay a fee, you can choose to have a meeting on site, which I would normally recommend, and then following the meeting, the planning officer will write up their report based on all of the other consultees' responses as well. So he'd already sent the application to the highways team, the heritage team, the archaeology team, and heard some feedback from those people. The heritage consultant, who is normally the sticking point, is definitely sitting on the fence at the moment. They were worried about views from the high street and how it will sit within the conservation area and all this sort of stuff. I mean, you've obviously not been to site, but you can't see our site from the high street. There's like, 2 meter wide gaps in between a couple of the properties, but there's absolutely no way you'd be able to see these houses from the main high street, which is, beautiful. It's lots of listed buildings, it's a conservation area, but we are outside of the conservation area. They were just concerned about how our massing and size of property impacted the rest of the conservation area, which sort of adjoins our site. So it was an interesting meeting. I've heard so many stories where people have done pre-app meetings, they've had their feedback from the planning consultant, 2 months later they get the written report and it's completely different. And I guarantee, that's likely to happen here. No matter, I'm taking every piece of positivity that came out of the meeting with a pinch of salt, because until that written report comes back, we are really none the wiser. But generally, the principle of development was agreeable. And, that was something he was very, very clear on. So, yeah, there's going to be still a lot of work to do from a massing and a heritage perspective to create a scheme that they're going to be happy with. One of the biggest issues with this is car parking, and we are juggling losing about 16 spaces out of the 55 that we have existing, juggling that with tenants that are currently in situ. We are sort of, from a lease perspective, need to guarantee certain rights to those commercial tenants. So the snooker hall has access to 22 spaces. Some of our existing commercial tenants have access to 12 spaces, but they're between the hours of 8 in the morning and 6 at night. The snooker hall need them from 6 o'clock at night to 8 in the morning. So there's a bit of dovetailing that we're doing to try and optimize the amount of parking that we get on site, compared with how many spaces we need for these four houses. So that's going to be, I think, the biggest challenge. There's a lot of work to do with our transport consultant. We are going to be doing some transport surveys, going to be looking at people coming in and out of site, cars going in and out of site by putting up cameras on each of the access ways, and having a survey over a couple of weeks to see actually how is this car park used. At the moment, I guarantee a lot of people are taking the piss and parking there like they shouldn't be, because it's right at the end of the high street and people, there's no restrictions at the moment in the car park. So yeah, we're going to have to clamp down on that. But overall, the pre-app meeting was okay. There was nothing that I thought would completely restrict us from doing what we wanted to do. There's just going to be a lot of negotiations now and a lot of design work to try and find something that satisfies the heritage consultant and the planning consultant. So watch this space. Excited to see how it unfolds.
And before we move on from that, I suppose it would probably be good for the listeners to understand your view in when you're taking a site with a planning application, at what point do you go, this one should be really good to put down the pre-app route, or not to do the pre-app route? So just understanding from our listeners' perspective how you came to a conclusion to do a pre-app for the new build part, but we clearly didn't for the conversion part.
Yeah, I think when you're including projects that are on the fringe of conservation areas, they're in conservation areas, the last thing that a heritage consultant and a planning consultant in those situations want to see is a fresh application, full application, landing on their desk that they haven't seen before or had any kind of insight into. It's just going to get their backs up. So things like this, where it is clearly going to be sensitive, we have the time, because the wider picture here is that we have an overage agreement with the seller that we bought this property for £100 per square foot for any additional square footage of new build space that we achieve at planning in the car park. And there was a process that we also agreed with that seller that included a pre-app process. So it gives us the time as a developer to kind of run the process whilst we are also developing the main office block, which we are doing, and we're hoping to start work on that pretty soon. And it also just starts that dialogue with the planners, basically. There's a lot of people from a stakeholder perspective on this project. And yeah, we felt like in this situation, it would be best to start those conversations and not just slap a full planning application on the planning officer's desk.
Cool, good.
And yeah, something that I've just snuck in here, because if you are an architect, if you're a property developer, if you want to understand more about the planning process and also the heritage aspect of conservation areas and listed building consents, we are having our third XP Surveys networking event on the 8th of February. It's a Thursday. It'll kick off from 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And we will have Claire Truman, who is a conservation architect from Heritage Revival, talking about how to work on listed buildings and in particular, develop HMOs within listed buildings, which I know, Jack's done some of, we've done some of. And we've also got David Kemp from DRK Planning talking about some of the changes that are coming into the planning process. One of the benefits of these changes to that particular site actually is the expected changes under Class MA, which removes any need to have a 3-month vacancy period on the commercial Class E element of a building before converting it to Class C3 residential. So at the moment, we have to wait for a empty commercial unit for 3 months before even submitting our planning application for Class MA. Whereas the latest changes are likely to remove that need. So it means that we can just get the planning application straight in and we save ourselves 3 months. So if you want to know tips like that and learn from one of the best, David Kemp's going to be talking on the 8th of February. It's in Henley-on-Thames. It's in a place called the Bull on Bell Street. You can find the event on Eventbrite. So just type in XP Surveys Networking Event to Eventbrite. It's free. Come along. It'll be a great chance to network. We are expecting probably 30 to 40 people, maybe more. The room might not be quite as big as it needs to be, but it will be a nice, intimate place to network, meet architects, meet property developers, and hopefully learn a lot more about the planning process.
Cool. I'll take over this one. So it's actually in line with Alfie Croft's message there, saying that he's found it difficult to find sites that stack up over the last few months. We basically have an acquisition process that's just constantly on a flywheel, getting offers out, making proposals, finding sites. Sometimes sites come to us when we're least expecting them or not even needing them. So as Ben mentioned at the very start of this call, we've got an insanely busy year for delivery. We've got tons of units to deliver. I think in excess of £30 million worth of stock, up to 80 units that we're delivering this year, straight in construction. So we can't at the moment really buy any oven ready sites that have planning consent. And as that nature, because our pipeline keeps building and we keep finding sites that have value, we still put it through our analyzer and we still go through the process of analyzing it as if we're going to buy it. We've even specifically on one particular site in west of London, we've submitted planning for 9 units. We've got the site in legals. We're pretty much in a position to get ready to exchange on it, subject to the planning being consented. But we would also pass that deal on. So I mentioned in Longhambra, we've already had success of doing that, and the other developer ended up buying the site off us. We make a margin on finding it, taking it to the point of inception to de-risking and of value, and then passing that on. It's great for us because it's just a cash bump in the business, but also for new buyers, it enables you to sort of tap into our acquisition process without having to employ a team or all the skills. And equally to that, Patrick in Central Suites has joined to sort of help manage that process, because we could have probably sold on ample more sites over the years, but we just didn't have the time. And it's a shame to see that go to a contact that's not someone we know. So Patrick's been working on that heavily equally. And we actually did an exercise, which we mentioned a few episodes back, where out of the 70 sites that we've bought since we set up the businesses, our average discount on guide price is 18%. So if we're charging a 2% acquisition fee, there's a huge saving there for you to get a ready analyzed project by our sort of award-winning spreadsheets that we use, to then go and take the site on and still have really good margin, hopefully in the projects that we deliver, subject to delivery. Obviously, we're normally delivering them. Just wanted to put that out there and let everyone know that if you are struggling to find sites, give us your contact us. or give us your details, and we will come back to you with, you know, an MO of what you're looking for. But equally, we as you will know, we collaborate. So we work on we do everything versus the money side of things, and we work 50-50 with joint venture investors. So reach out if you're, you know, I always say people at networking events are either looking for one of two things, unless they have a completely different agenda and they're there for the wrong reasons, but it's either deals or money. And we're big believers that you always need to be looking for both. If you find a good deal, you can sometimes find the money off the back of that. But equally, we've always had a really strong deal flow. So if you're struggling in that capacity, come work with us, or come look at the sites that we've got, and we can hopefully fill your pipeline and also show you how we've acquired those sites.
Nice. Cool. So I was in Colney Hatch Lane in Muswell Hill, North London, N10, earlier yesterday with Tom. We have finished about half the strip out now, which is great. It's really good to get that moving and start to see the skeleton of the building. You know, this thing would have been built 120 years ago, which is crazy, but it's still standing strong. And, you know, we uncovered some really useful stuff that will help us kind of add a little bit more value, maybe trim down some of the floor zones and lower our floor, gain some head height. So yesterday, yeah, it was a really good opportunity to walk around. We also met with an agent, which has basically kind of monopolized the sort of North London scene for a while now. She sells a lot of stuff off plan without actually getting it onto Rightmove, and had some really interesting case studies for us to sort of think about, which I'm super excited to kind of explore a little bit more. But I wanted to quickly run through our interior design package that Aura have created. This is still in draft, and you'll actually see some of my comments as I kind of flick through this. But I mean, I'm not sure Jack's even seen this.
Nope.
So this is sort of how things have generally been presented to date. We've gone through a few rounds of conversations to get to this point. So we're pretty, we're pretty sure this is the direction that we're going to be going in. The entrance hallways, are quite a big feature in any property. You want to be coming into something that is quite hotel-like, really, and that's the sort of vibe that we're going for. Sort of two-tone walls, some wall paneling, some bespoke hand railing, and some nice entrance sort of checkered floor tiles, which will look amazing. Kitchen wise, the advice from the agent, and I would always recommend this, speak to as many agents as you possibly can. What's selling at the moment, what are people looking for? As soon as I mentioned grey, she was like, please don't put a grey kitchen in. Navy is okay, but actually a lot of people are finding that a little bit more dated. People want the sort of pastel colors, the creams, the stone colors. So this is the sort of the vibe that we're going for. Shaker style kitchen is is a timeless classic and sort of always will be. So we're probably going to go down that route with aged brass handles, which look great. We've got a light oak engineered wood flooring going down in like a herringbone style. Recessed LED lighting, which sort of looks flush with the ceiling. They look amazing. And then a quartz worktop with a bit of veining to that. So Miele kitchen appliances is probably where we're going to be going, or Siemens, one or the other. But this is an area where the resale values will be around about £800 a square foot, which is a lot higher than what we've done historically. So it's a bit of a new process for us as XP, but we do this all the time with Aura Architecture for our clients. So we've got some good suppliers, we've got some good ideas of what the market may want. Kitchen elevations have been drawn up by Aura just to give us an idea of how we would lay those out. And we've got this sort of half height splashback, got a relatively open space around the hob, which I really like. We've got enough space for cupboards elsewhere, and it just makes it feel a lot more open. And when we've got 3-meter high ceilings like we have, I think that'll look quite stunning in that property. This is where I had to push back a little bit and say, look, Gabby, I don't think we're going a bit too traditional. I still want to keep some sort of modern bathroom fittings in there. And yeah, these are the sorts of conversations you'll be having with your interior designer. It's, if you don't like something, tell them. That's what they're there for. They provide ideas, and if you don't like it, you say, find me something else. So yeah, next time we have a chat, there'll be a couple of more contemporary options that we can take a look at. Basically crossed out all the ones that I didn't like. And to be honest, I'm not an interior designer. My style is I'm not great, to be honest, but I know what I don't like, and I know also what is maybe a little bit too risky for us as a developer. You don't want to go too out there. It has to look stylish, but it has to actually appease, appease as many buyers as you can without sort of somebody going in there and being like, oh, I don't like that. The bathroom. We had this on Sunset Court actually, where a lot of elderly buyers just didn't like the grey kitchen, the grey bathrooms. They wanted a creamy tile. So if your target market is affluent downsizers looking to move into a property, they don't want some crazy splashbacks and funky tiling. They just want something that is clean and cream. What else have we got? Yep, some sanitary ware from Luso Stone, a couple of light fittings which look great. We'll be having some bespoke joinery in some of the bedrooms. And yeah, I think, there's not much for me to go through on this. It was just to give you guys an insight into the inner workings of deciding on interior design and how that process works, concepts, mood boards, colored elevations. The next step will be sort of CGIs to actually bring these designs to life and actually really picture what the scheme is going to look like. Cool. Let's get my presentation back up.
I think we're moving on to office fit outs now.
Yeah, I won't spend too long on this. When you do an office fit out for a commercial tenant coming in, you will often get the question asked as to what standard of finish will you be, as landlord, as developer, putting in these units. And when people say, will it be a Cat A or a Cat B fit out, what they mean is essentially what I've shown on the image here. A Cat A space is very much your bare bones. We will put a lick of paint on the walls. We will provide the mechanical and electrical, air conditioning, lighting, switches into the space, but it will be very much a bare shell. A Cat B fit out will be all of the gubbins that would go inside of it. So if you wanted to make that a fully finished office that somebody could move straight into, with partitioning for office spaces, for breakout spaces, for kitchens, for any specialist equipment that you want in that space, that is something that either the incoming tenant will pay for, or they'll have to bring their own fit out company in. And actually, I find it quite a tragedy sometimes when someone like us as the developer fit out to a Cat A space, and the new tenant comes in and basically strips out all of the previous Cat A equipment and air conditioning units and lighting from the space to basically just dispose of it and then put in their new Cat B fit out. It seems like a massive waste, but effectively you don't know who's going to occupy that space until you get a new tenant in situ. So yeah, that's the difference between Cat A and Cat B. I know, Jack, you worked on a lot of office fit outs in White City previously. Anything you want to add?
Yeah, so we actually took on, so the project that I work on was with Net-a-Porter, and we took a Cat A office and we project managed the Cat B fit out, which came in at £7.5 million. So it wasn't a mean feat for how much was spent from getting it to Cat A to Cat B. I haven't actually worked out the pound per square foot, but I think it's something like £140 per square foot just for that transition. And it's a pain in the arse, if I'm honest. Ben mentioned that all your M&E that was in your Cat A space might not be suitable for your Cat B space. And that, I believe we worked out the costing. I think the change in the M&E and, power supplies and basically all of the power and everything going to the site was a few £1 million, to the tune of the space we were working in. There was an atrium in the building with air conditioning that was pulling air from the atrium and pumping it back into the building. and someone designed the meeting rooms underneath the air conditioning units, and it basically meant that there was like a whirring noise in the meeting rooms. And if you're spending £7.5 million on an office, you don't want like a clattering noise, like you're sat outside the back of a takeaway shop listening to their extractor fan running. And that process to rework those layouts was a huge fortune. And M&E consultants are really expensive. I think the one on this job was like £2.5 an hour. And it just gets ridiculous after ridiculous after ridiculous. But we fit out as simplistic as we can, let the tenant do smaller fit outs if they would like. And I think one other thing to touch on is, as a landlord, if you bring in a really really good covenant that wants to add value to the building, that wants to make it nice, wants to put Cat B space in there, they might actually be adding value to your space. So make sure that's a consideration. So for an example, we own a row of 5 industrial buildings, and we actually had an architectural practice spend £350,000 on glazing the whole front roller shutter door and fitting out the building. Now that's just added a significant amount of value to our industrial building. Now it's an office. Now it's got glazing at the front. It's been nicely kitted out. It's got polished concrete floors. So that's a consideration to think about when you're, potentially letting. Whereas if we put a potential administration or engineering business, we might not have got that fit out included within the tenancy. So it's something to think about when coming to office fit outs.
Nice. Cool. So we are currently recruiting for XP Surveys. We're looking for a business development manager. So if you've got or know anyone who's got experience in the construction industry, surveying industry, any relevant construction field or technology, we'd be interested in having a chat with you. This person will effectively try and build relationships with architects and agents and developers to bring in more work into XP Surveys, but also build relationships with surveyors as well, sort of from an external freelance and contract basis. So, if we expand in the way that we want to, we are going to need a database of measured building surveyors that we can call upon if our internal team can't deliver on that particular project. So a network of 10 to 20 surveyors around the UK that we can say, look, this one's down the road from you. Can you take this one on this date? And this BDM will be looking to build relationships with those types of people as well. But ultimately, we want more revenue into the business. We want to build relationships with architects that we can work with longer term, because they are our avatar client. They are the service that we serve the most and can add the most value to. And we want to build long-standing relationships where we are the only surveying practice that they go to. And we've got a number of architects on our books that do that at the moment. They don't go anywhere else. They really love the presentation of our survey output, the flexibility that we provide. I actually met one of our architects last week for lunch, and he said, you are the only surveying practice that give me a Google Drive doc of photos that your surveyors have sent, that have taken on site. He did have a bit of a concern or a query for us to look at, because some of those files are like 1 gigabyte. So it was like, if you could package them up and strip them down and reduce the file size, it would be even better. But yeah, he said we were the only company that actually provide a full suite of photos, which he finds super useful when he's designing his scheme. So if you know any architects that constantly get measured surveys and topographical surveys done, which will be the start of every project that they work on, we'd love to have an introduction to them. And talking about recruitment and new starters, we had a guy called Mark on Monday join Aura. He's a Part 3 architect. He's been qualified for a number of years now, so super excited to be working with him and seeing what he can do. He's done a lot of work in Southwest London on smaller sort of private-led client projects, and then also some really big development stuff as well. So he's going to be helping XP at some point, I'm sure, help optimize our scheme and sort of max value from them. So yeah, if you are an architect or if you are an interior designer and you want a new start with a new company, we're doing some really exciting stuff in and around London and the home counties, and we'd love to have a chat with you if you think you would fit in, and are keen and eager to create fantastic homes for people. So if you are interested, email info@aurahomes.co.uk and somebody in the team will pick it up. Did you put this stud wall in the photo? No,
No,
must have been
but
Christina.
I think I know why it went in there. Christina
Yeah,
overheard me talking about it today, so
yeah. No, it's. I mean, yeah. So research and development tax relief. I've had three calls now with a tax specialist that mainly deals in R&D. And I'm still very confused about it, to be honest. It's the sort of thing that when they are describing what classifies as an R&D potential claim, just sounds like it's my job. Like from an architect, the role is to find solutions for problems, design amazing homes, create amazing layouts. But there's so much that can be claimed as part of an R&D research and development process that I didn't know about. So it's very, very niche. And every time we go into this like rabbit hole of, they caveat it with this and okay, if the listed building, if you're working on a listed building and you couldn't just install your plasterboard directly to the walls of the listed building. You had to use an internal frame to do that because you couldn't touch the external walls. And that had a knock-on effect with how you actually design the joist because it had to be a separate independent joist system from the existing joist. And it's an area that I'm really keen to explore more. And that's why we've got the specialist on board, because I understand that architects and developers can claim these reliefs for solving problems that aren't just off the shelf. But every time I have a conversation with them, I come away a little bit more confused than I did. So I'd love to hear what everyone else's experience is with R&D claims if you do get them. But they are there for people to use. It can be a significant relief on your tax liabilities if you're doing any sort of innovation, any sort of development that sort of progresses the norm within your industry, creates sort of new products or new ways of doing things, then there are R&D tax reliefs available. So yeah, make sure you're aware of them at least, and get someone in as a specialist to discuss them with you. Cool. And then on to one of the key things that we want to talk about strategies to focus on. Is this a good time to answer Alfie's question? Hopefully Alfie's still listening. Give us a thumbs up if you are, but
I mean, he can always listen to
watch it
back.
again. Yeah.
Sorry, Alfie. Yeah, sorry for keeping you on so long. Hopefully everything in between was relevant. So I'll explain why this question's on here, and then I'll answer Alfie's question, and then I will talk through strategies to focus on in 2024. So it was about 10:15 p.m. last night at the Titans event, and there's a few people backdooring the event and crawling away, and Manny comes up to me and asks me to be on the panel. So obviously I agreed, and the main reason we were on the panel was to discuss what strategies to focus on in 2024. Should we answer Alfie's question now or at the end?
Yeah, go on. Let's do it now.
Cool. So Alfie's question for listeners on the podcast. Yeah, he's just replied he's still on. Good. Thanks for sticking with us. So have you found acquisitions over the last few months difficult, because he's basically finding that no deals stack up? In short, it depends what you phrase as difficult. I think there's always deals that won't stack up. I don't think there will be a market where every deal does work. And I've got some. We've never, I touched on earlier. We've always been in rooms at events, and normally people are looking for one of two things: money or deals. And I feel like, and probably Ben doesn't like it that much sometimes, but we've always had plenty of opportunities to sort of feast off, and to some degree can be picky. And that's put us in good stead. And I completely believe that's to do with your own internal process and not necessarily the market. And I think one of the best tips, because obviously we haven't got forever, it's Friday evening, you all want to get on to your evenings. One of the best tips that I could give to anyone out there struggling to find deals: first, take a look in the mirror. This is like a therapy session. First, take a look in the mirror and understand what your competitive advantage is, what your skills are, because I can guarantee you will waste a lot of time on sites that don't actually suit and plug into your system very well. So the example for us is we outsource our construction on a fixed price JCT contract, which means that our contractors are building it out and making a profit to build out our sites. we are not the cheapest contractor. I was sent a site in Oxfordshire, which was a beautiful site, 24 houses, a little bit of value enhancement and planning, but essentially it needs a contractor to buy that, because at the end of the day, someone's got the planning on it, someone needs to deliver it, and then someone needs to sell it. The estate agent can sell it, so you're just left with delivery. I turned around to that agent who we actually bought exchanged with on Longhambra, and they were sort of scratching their head why I didn't want to put a foot forward, because I knew I wouldn't be competitive. And it's because we don't make value on construction. So I knew the numbers wouldn't work. I knew we were miles off, and I parked that scheme. So where we do add value is securing something probably below what it's worth, or being creative at the outset, and then adding value in design and delivery before it gets to the construction stage. So we need to get sites pretty early to make them work. So if you look at every single deal that we've done today, we've pretty much bought something that didn't have planning in place, or we put the planning in place and structured it creatively to de-risk it, or get a lower value on the guide price. So I highly recommend you look at yourself in the mirror. If you've got a construction in-house, look at sites that other people like us can't deliver, and you can be more competitive. So point number one, understand your competitive advantage, because then deals will look different to you. You will look at deals in a different way. Second is creativity. If a deal doesn't work, and I'm guessing this is because the purchase price is too high, therefore from the outset you don't believe the scheme works. Now, a vendor or a seller are normally motivated by one or two things. They either want speed, or they either want the value that they want. If they want the value that they want, agree to pay them that value, but structure the deal so that it does work for you. So for an example, you would have seen we completed on a site in Marlow, which has now got planning consent for 8 apartments. When we were agreeing to buy that site, I thought the purchase price was quite punchy, £1.1 million. So the way that I structured it is I said, okay, I'll pay you £1.1 million, but I will pay you that once we have planning consented for what we need. It took us 18 months to get planning. That saved us 18 months worth of mortgage costs. Therefore, the scheme works a lot better for us doing it that way around. So be creative. Think about, how can I twist and change this? The price isn't everything. You can delay things. You can exchange and complete later. You could do a JV. So think about how you can focus on creating the deal rather than just looking at something, putting in the purchase price, putting in the build cost, seeing what it spits out on the gross development and seeing if it works. It's all about molding that deal to suit you and to benefit you and make your scheme work. So that's one, creativity. And then Alfie, I don't know your processes, and we do have a video on our YouTube where I go through like our acquisition process and how we go through it. And we're now approaching up to 1,000 offers that we've got out the door since we've set up the business. But it kills me when I meet people at property events and they say, "Oh, I can't find any deals that work." And I say, "Well, how many deals are you looking at?" And they say, "Oh, I viewed one last month, and I've got one next week, and I'll view one next month." And realistically, if you're looking at a site a month or a project a month, you're just not getting the right activity out there. So have a really consistent and, I suppose, active way about going and looking at sites and finding those sites. So the reason we can get 1,000 offers out is because we've refined our process so that it is slick. Normally takes me about half a day from a desktop perspective, and half a day out of the office to offer on a site, which is how we can get all those offers out. So activity. And then last but not least, valuing your own time. People often think the opportunity is the thing out in the market, the property you're looking at, the project you're looking at, what that agent's just sent you. I believe the most important thing for you is your own time. So dial it down so you're spending a minimal amount of time to find the problem that might not make that deal work. Now, what I mean by that is, if the deal doesn't work, try and find that problem quicker than going through all the processes. The amount of developers that I see out there that see a site on Rightmove, get their quantity surveyor to do a bill of quants, get their architect to do a SketchUp plan, go and view the site themselves and go and view it with a builder, then go back to their desk to make an offer, and there's 20 bids and they're 15th in the pack. For me, it's all about valuing your own time to get to the top 3 bids and then worry about all of that work thereafter. So that way rather than doing all of that work pre-offer or offer acceptance. Get that contract and then do the work after the fact. And you'll find you'll get to see more sites, you'll get offers on more sites, and you will get more success and acceptances on sites. Good. In strategies. Is there anything you want to say about strategies, Ben, before I...
No, you crack on.
So on the panel, classic me being shy, I was very contradictory. Everyone was like, oh, what strategies are going to work in 2024? And guess what I said? All of them. I don't believe there's a market where none of these strategies work. There's markets where some of them get more difficult or you know, if there's legislation involved, that's a completely different story. If there's a complete legislation change and, for example, service accommodation needs, you know, L2 fire systems, that is out the window for a lot of people. But what I'm getting at is I believe that out of the sort of trajectory of the last few years, we've seen obviously the peak in the residential market during COVID because everyone wanted to move after that period of being locked in. We had interest rate rises up to 7.5% for a 5-year fixed HMO mortgage. I was talking to my broker this morning. We've got mortgages locked in at 2.7% on a 5-year fix. It's just a lot more difficult to make HMOs work. They still do work. We showed you one on the first slide. We're buying a site which is 4 flats and is kicking out 40% return on cash left in. It's just more difficult. So strategies that we're looking at this year is we're obviously going to crack on with more developments. One thing that I would recommend and is hold us in really good stead, and you're probably bored of it by now because I talk about our stress testing quite frequently. If you haven't got on your development sheet a decrease in gross development value by 10%, an increase of build cost by 15%, and a delay in the projects by 6 to 12 months, you might come unstuck in months where, you know, John Howard was saying that the market sticks. That is a really good method to put in your spreadsheet now for the worst case scenario. And that's held us in good stead in a difficult year. So that's what I would advise for developments. We've already given you a few tips and tasters that we were going back to Alfie's question on how to secure those developments. For HMOs, the exact same thing. Stress test the interest rates at the end. Make sure that if interest rates do go up another % or the project takes a bit longer, the scheme still works. And that's what we're focusing on. So we focus on developments, HMOs, and in central suites, we also focus on flips. One thing I will say about flips is I do believe they still work. And I also believe buy-to-let still work. But it's just about finding the right deals and having your own metrics and understanding what you're looking for. One sort of key moment that I did want to touch on is Ben and I went through our goals in December in the last episode. I think when you're thinking about what deals work, what strategies to focus on, the most important thing is for you to get your goals on paper that have no relevance of what address a deal is, and you work back to what you want to achieve in your own goals and then focus on what strategies are going to get you there. But I do believe you might be buying commercial sites that are, fulfillment centers for Amazon. You might be repurposing retail units. A lot of people think the retail is dead. I see tons of retail businesses thriving in this open market. Gales has had the most branches open last year than they've ever had open. Retail isn't dead. You just got to make sure you can make it work. That's
Very
it.
good. Nice. Yeah, I like it. I mean, I think we've always been big advocates of having an arsenal of different strategies that we're aware of and can implement, rather than being this is the strategy that I'm going to be focusing on. It's reviewing an opportunity and seeing what strategies within your arsenal can you pull out to make that a good deal, rather than just solely focusing on I'm going to do commercial conversions, I'm going to do rent to SA. It's just not what a property developer should be. You need to be looking for ways in which you can add value and use all the tools in your arsenal to do so.
Just wanted to touch on, I met someone at a property event once, no naming names, but I said, what do you, I always use the phrase, what do you keep yourself busy with? Because you never know what someone's doing. And he replied with, I do commercial conversions nationally between 20 and 22 units. And I was like, how would you ever go out and find a deal? But one thing I forgot to mention that was on my notes is, and Ben alluded to it, an arsenal of understanding of different strategies. One thing that we always make sure we do is have protected exits, multiple exits. We've actually got one of our buildings we're discussing to completely pre-let the whole site to the NHS or convert it to 20 flats that we got consent for. So exits are key. But one thing that I would stress is when you're developing out, it may seem bullish if we're developing out 20 unit site or whatever it may be. But if you can refinance that whole site and retain the rents, and the rents cover the mortgage, and the mortgage on the stress test on the rents pays off the development funds, there's that hugely discounts the amount of risk on that particular site. So take care of your exits in any market. I think that's a key point to touch on and maybe exit on.
Very good. Yeah, I think that's us for today. We've gone on for 55 minutes. Thanks for keeping with us all the way through, Alfie. Hopefully see you next week. And thanks to everyone else that's tuned in. Till next week. See you later.